My name is Claire Dappert. I'm a historic archaeologist here at the Illinois State Archaeological Survey of the University of Illinois. Basically, I'm in charge of the historic analysis laboratory here at the American Bottom Field Station. Any state or federally funded archaeological project in the state of Illinois that deals with historic sites, our office goes out, conducts the archaeology. We excavate the features, and when I say feature, I mean like a cellar or a privy or a cistern. All of the artifacts that we excavate comes back to my lab, where they're washed and inventoried and sorted and analyzed. And at that point, that's where I get them, and I do interpretations of historic sites. I look at the artifacts in terms of form and function and date, and try to tell the story of the daily lives of the occupants of a historic site. I first started working for IISG in 1998 as an undergraduate at the University of Illinois. I worked for IISG for maybe 4 to 5 years before I left and went back to grad school. Currently, I've been back since 2009, so about 6 years, and I've been doing historic archaeology for that amount of time. Probably the most surprising aspect about my work is some of the people that we look at, we really don't know much about them. We assume that they're poor farmers, or they're poor unskilled laborers. But actually, what we find is they may be eating high quality food. They may have items that were relatively expensive, and so we really have to ask why. Why were these people using these items in their lives? And usually the answer is they were trying to negotiate an identity. They were trying to make their lives better through the use of material objects. Well, when I first went into undergraduate, I wasn't for sure what I wanted to do. I went in as a communications major, and I didn't do very well because I didn't find it very interesting. So I actually flunked out of school, and I had to go to Parkland for a semester, and that's when I first took my I took my first anthropology course, and it clicked with me. I understood it. I could make sense of it, and I was genuinely interested in it. So I got back into the University of Illinois, got straight A's in all my anthropology courses, and was able to graduate with honors. After I graduated, I continued working for the Illinois State Archaeological Survey, and I was actually doing a lot of prehistoric archaeology at the time, but I always had interest in historic archaeology, and I decided to go to graduate school for maritime archaeology, of all things. I thought it would be more challenging, and it was. And after grad school, I wasn't for sure if I wanted to go find a job or if I wanted to continue my education. I did choose that latter route, and actually went overseas and did my PhD in historic archaeology in Australia. And I've been back since 2009. I want to say it changed depending on how old I was, but early on I wanted to be an astronaut, and then I wanted to be a doctor. But then I realized that I didn't want to be a doctor because I didn't like blood. And then I wanted to be a veterinarian. That was one of the things that I even considered when I was in college. I took an animal sciences class. But then, well, two things really. During the animal sciences class, I had to put on one of the rubber gloves and, stick my hand in the stomach of a cow, and that wasn't very pleasant. The other thing is that as a vet, I don't think that I could put animals down. I know that sometimes if they're hurt, it's required, but it's just something that I couldn't deal with. Yeah. Science, chemistry. I like to dissect things and blow things up. I had some really good teachers that helped me connect with it. Also, growing up on a farm in West Central Illinois, my grandfather collected arrowheads, and so we had this huge collection, like a family collection from the farm. And I always wanted to look at it and play with it when I was a kid. I didn't really know what they were, but yeah, I guess I had an early connection, even though I didn't realize it. Just do what you want to do, follow your heart, and when something clicks, you'll know it. That said, I think there are very few people that go into study knowing exactly what they want to do. And so if early on you can keep that broad rather than try to specialize, it may save time in the long run. We found a pair of dentures in East St. Louis, and they were very interesting because the teeth were made of ceramic, and then the bridge had some metal in it, but it also had like a rubbery compound in it. We didn't do any testing to determine what the compound was, but yeah, I'd never seen anything like it before. It's really interesting. And they were found in a privy, and whoever dropped them was smart enough not to pick them out of the privy. I think completing my dissertation, I'm most proud about. It was one of my lifelong goals, and it's something that is very difficult, and I think a lot of people underestimate how much work actually goes into it. When you're done, it's almost like it's a part of you, and when you submit that thing, it's almost like you lost something and you don't know what to do with yourself after that. So, so yeah, it's one of my greatest achievements. I guess that one of the challenging things about archaeology is we work in extreme environments a lot, uh, extreme hot, extreme cold, and these things can all take a toll on your body. It's important when we go out in the field, we go prepared and take lots of sunscreen and or warm clothes. I find it's very surprising to me how just people's understanding of what caused illness and how it was treated. I talked a little bit earlier about germ theory, and just people didn't really know why they were getting sick. I mean, they thought it related to the air they were breathing, stale air, miasmic air. And also the way that when they did get sick, the way that they treated it was to expel some sort of bodily fluid, whether it was through vomiting or diarrhea or sweating or bloodletting, or medicines that had dangerous and sometimes addictive ingredients. Yeah, it's just amazing to me how much we have learned in the last 115 years, 110 years, about health and about how to treat ailments. Yeah, it's amazing. Mm. Well, I will say if anyone out there wants to be an archaeologist, uh, it's best to start out general. Get a feel for the different niches in archaeology. We have prehistoric archaeology, we have maritime archaeology, we have historic archaeology, and even within those there are certain aspects that you can study: ceramics, lithics, glass, bone, and just figure out what really piques your interest and go from there. Many of the best archaeologists that I know can do a myriad of things within the field. They're well-rounded and can fill a lot of shoes. When we identify a historic site, typically what we need to do first is establish the boundaries. And we can do this by walking the ground and identifying artifacts, identifying the scatter. And once that's done, what we'll do is we'll set up a collection unit grid. And within that grid, we'll do a metal detecting survey. We'll also bring in a backhoe and remove the top layer of the soil, which is typically a plow zone in agricultural areas, or a humus layer, which has grass and other organic matter. So we'll peel that back. And what we see below is any hole that's been dug in the past, like a well or a privy or a cistern, typically leaves like a dark stain against the sterile subsoil. And so that's what we want to excavate. So we'll take a feature, draw a line and bisect it. So we'll remove half of that feature, and what's left is a profile view. So we'll photograph that and also map it. And then that second half is very important because that's the half that we collect according to zones. And when I say zones, that's like a filling episode or layer within that feature. So once all those layers are excavated, the feature is complete. And we do that for typically all features across the site. Once it's been cleared, the site is covered up and construction can commence. So yeah, that's how we approach a historic site. In the lab, all those artifacts that we dig up get washed, they get labeled, they get cataloged, counted and weighed, and then they get analyzed. So we also do, I guess in the analysis phase, we date artifacts. We also do calculations called the minimum number of items. So the minimum number of items, it accounts for not the fragments or each individual fragment in a sample, but the minimum number of items in a given sample. So an item can be one fragment, or it can be several fragments from the same object. So for instance, if we have a bottle that's broken into 3 fragments, but they mend, well, then the minimum number of items is 1. Once we have calculated all of the minimum number of items for each feature or each site or whatever scale we choose to do the analysis, we can do inter-site or intra-site comparisons. So say for instance, if I have a farmstead over here, we'll call it farmstead A, who has say 6 plates and 7 cups and 2 teapots, and then I have farmstead B over here who only has teacups and say other drinking vessels. I can compare them in terms of activities. So over here this is more of a domestic sample, and well, the drinking may imply something else. So once I have those calculations run and comparisons done, that's really where I start writing. And I do compliance reports. I also do more interpretive type narratives. So. Well, fortunately, I've already completed my education, so I got that one under my feet. But to be honest, I'm happy where I am right now. I think that I have a good job that many people uh, would love to have. ISAS is a great place to work. I have some great colleagues. So hopefully, I can continue to build those relationships here and continue to publish and yeah, just make some great breakthroughs in historic archaeology.